Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game from 1918. This was a casual game played in New York between the great Capablanca on the white end and Marc Fonaroff. Marc Fonaroff was a professor at the New York Institute of Musical Art. Today I believe it's known as the Manhattan School of Music. And it was there he taught the violin from 1903 until his retirement in 1927. This game is regarded by many as a brilliancy, one of Capablanca's prettiest games, and it certainly has an elegant finish. So let's dive in and check out this 22 mover, Kappa, opening with the king pawn. Marc Fonaroff likes that idea as well. We have a Scotch opening, denoted by move 3 d4, some early pressure with this opening on e5. Black on this move 3 says, I don't want to give up my e5 pawn. I'm going to try and hang on to it, lend some support there. That is not considered best. Considered best is to take on d4. A couple differences between this capture and the move played in the game is that with this capture on d4, the bishop's eyes stay opened, and black retains the option to play d5 in just one move to later challenge white's fourth rank pawn. Okay, in this game it's d6, and so white's d pawn lives, at least for the moment, and has the option to now advance, grab space, establish itself in black's house, and do so with an attack. White can play this move. It is certainly an option. If white is going to play d5, it is probably best to play d5 right now. At a moment when, in other words, the c pawn is not obstructed. Those of you familiar with this fixed central structure and how they are staggered will know that the c pawn will one day be excited to get to the c5 square. That would be a desirable pawn break for white. So to play d5 one move later, so for example, if first knight c3, and only then d5, how would the c pawn get rolling? Conveniently. Okay, in this game, Capablanca has no interest in closing the center. Instead, he's going to try and overtake black's e5 pawn. Let's see how he tries to do this. First, direct pressure, and now indirect pressure over e5. He's trying to kill a defender of this point. The knight's currently pinned. Unpinned. Can white win a pawn at this stage? Not quite. Still needs some development. Kappa castles on this move 6. Why is white not winning with this variation? Well, it's because after knight takes e5, there would follow bishop takes e4, and we're simply exchanging e-pawns. So more development is necessary. Castles, rook e1. Aha. Now things are a little bit different if we revisit this variation. The e-pawn is reinforced. This is now a threat to chop on c6 and chop away on e5. Black understood this, captures on d4, releases the tension in the center, gives up his strong fourth rank pawn. And it's important that black play in this way, release the tension. Let's see why. I was actually very surprised at how lengthy the variation can turn out to be before we can observe with clarity white winning some material. So for example, if black castles, here we go. Chop, chop, queen exchange, knight takes e. We're not done yet. White has won a pawn, but a student of the game who's a little bit curious, a little bit more curious, seeing a bit deeper at this moment, will question, wait a second, can I not still take the pawn on e4? If you take the pawn on e4, you're going to end up losing even more material. Let's see how. Chop, chop, chop. We cannot chop again. We're going to get mated. Back rank mate. The winning move for white in this position kicks off with knight d3, cutting the rook off from seeing d1, and now there are two unprotected pieces on the e-file, and the white rook is hungry. What do? You move the knight, you lose the bishop. You protect the knight gets a kick. He actually doesn't have to move, though. There's this check. Pretty lengthy, huh? If the king goes to the corner, there's knight f2. If the king goes to f1, the knight is poisoned because black is in a position to recapture with the discovered check and the knight is hit. Wow. Well, the winning continuation from this point is to chop away, develop the bishop, and we got a lot of pieces on dark squares. We're hitting the rook, and we're ready to dive into e7 with a fork. What do? In anticipation of the fork, defending the knight, bishop e7. Who's the defender of the knight? We like to deflect defenders. Only at this stage do we now see white's going to win even more material than just a pawn. Okay. Pretty lengthy variation, but one that I found kind of interesting after this rook e1 move. Yeah, you gotta do something about that central tension, is the short story. Black captures. And now notice how the white pieces immediately make use of this central square d4 now that the e5 pawn is on the sidelines. The king knight makes use of that square, the queen, and soon we're going to have this queen knight pivot on d4. This is significant. I mean, currently if we do a piece comparison, the queens, white's queen is looking pretty good. Not easily kicked from that square. Those of you thinking about c5 are probably not thinking enough about the weak squares you create on the d file. d6 pawn would be half dead. d5 would be a huge hole. King is still in the center. Not a good idea to play c5. Okay, what does black play? Castles. Only at this stage does black castle. Is this pawn poison? It is. If you chop on a7, now there'd be c5, cutting the queen from defense. You could defend it, but now you're in a pickle. You're in a pin. Okay. Most experienced players don't even think twice. Even think for a second about grabbing that a7 pawn. He is poison. We have queen c3. This move, this next maneuver with the queen reminded me some of Game 6 of the 1972 World Chess Championship match. Fischer playing as white in that game against Spassky. In that game, Fischer's queen went from the queen side. That's where there was some activity in that side of the board, and then it slid all the way over to the king side, and then that's where something new started brewing. We have a similar thing going on here. This is a nice pivot. Queen is on a completely opened third rank and also vacating d4. Moreover, there's now a threat on c7, the threat to take with the queen, not the knight, because pin scenario. So we have this threat right here. How exactly should black parry that threat? One of the computer moves is d5. I don't want to go down that line. It is interesting. White can actually win a pawn, but black enjoys some very nice activity. The two moves I'd like to investigate here, I'll throw a pop quiz your way. How would you reply to this threat against c7? Queen takes c7. Would you play a6 or would you play c6? Which one do you think is better and why? I think that's the only... No, I probably have a pop quiz towards the end with the elegant combination, but yeah, I guess this is pop quiz 1 of 2 for this video. Feel free to pause the video. What would you play, A6 or C6? What's the difference? Okay. In the game, we have C6. The knight has to do something in both cases. I believe that A6 would be better. Primary reason for this thought is you do not weaken D6. Note that this is a half-open file, and if you're playing C6, D6 is a hole, and white can apply pressure to it in many ways. By playing A6, again, this would be poison to take with the knight. A6 would shoo the knight away, and this would remain solid, the D6 square. Black can look forward to some repositioning, putting the bishop on F6, rook on E8. Okay, in this game it is C6, and we are soon going to witness the significance of C6 versus A6. D6 is now a huge focal point for Capablanca. Pivots on D4 with an eye on F5, a killer square for a knight, especially so when there are no light square bishops around. It's much more difficult to address a knight, a white knight on F5, when there isn't a light square bishop around. You could control it with G6. That is not without its issues. F6 and H6 would be weakened. And we know who's still around that can take advantage of those squares. There are a few pieces still around that can take advantage of F6 and H6. Okay. Knight D4, Knight D7, Knight F5. Drifting towards the king side now. Knight on F5, Queen on G3. If you're going to make a queen move, if you want to improve as a player, here's a tip. Try and find at least 2 good reasons behind every move you make, especially when it's a queen move. She's a multi-purpose piece. Get her doing more than just one thing. She's doing more than one thing right here, coordinating on D6, and reminding black that this bishop can't go too far. Otherwise, there'll be a mate threat on G7. Now, usually in this scenario where a pawn in this case, is attacked twice and defended 0, usually it will drop. Not here. It's an exceptional case. The knight can actually block the queen's direct sight of D6 and open the queen's eyes to D6. So this is defended for the moment. But white still applies pressure to it, however indirect. There are 3 pieces keying in on D6. If only that guy's still back here, and black had played A6. Okay, Queen C7. White now centralizes. Black gets a rook involved as well. And here we go with an initial sacrifice. Rook takes D6 is played. This is not entirely sound. There is a way for black to reply and have it be a level position. Considered best at this moment is to play H4, kind of squeezing, extracting, let's say, the most out of the H-pawn, creating a flight square and potentially looking to use that as a battering ram against black's kingside. The move played in the game, rook takes D6. Black replies with the recapture, the rook. And now we have bishop takes E5. What is this move doing? Well, something has to be done over the D6 rook. He's hit a ton. And what do you do? What do you do about that? If you take the bishop at this stage, white will recapture with the queen. There's a problem on D6, and there is no longer defense, at this moment at least, over G7. White has a mate threat and looking to simply win the rook and be up a knight and a pawn. The best at this point would be f6, and white wins material. There is a way out, however, on this move 18. Black can, with this next move, play, here we go, queen to a5. Hitting the rook, unprotected rook on e1, threatening mate in 1, and threatening the bishop. Considered best from here is the following line: bishop c3, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes, and black, currently up the exchange, will have to give it back. This is still a problem, the mate threat and the rook. Best defense would be rook g6, and we have this continuation. White gets the material back, is currently up a pawn, but it does not feel like white is up a pawn with this messed up queenside structure. It is a level position. Black ready to scoop up a pawn and have a passer. It's an even position. Okay. I'm fine that Marc did not find queen to a5 because we would not have seen this elegant combination. Okay, no queen a5 here. The move played, rook to d1, a very clever looking move by black. No time to take the queen, no time to take the bishop. Black's threatening mate. White takes the rook, and now black takes on e5. Currently, black is down a pawn, hitting the queen, defending g7, and threatening b2 as well. Maybe it appears at this stage black is going to get the material back. That is not so. So this is, again, just a 22 move game. What is this elegant combination? Final pop quiz. Pop quiz 2 of 2. White to move. Let's see if you can spot Capablanca's elegant finish. Okay, here we go. It's beautiful. First, knight h6. Exploiting the pin. Only one move. And now move number 2. Maybe the one that was tricky to spot after knight h6. There is queen takes bishop. White is now up a piece and a pawn. After queen takes queen, the move played in the game, we now have knight f7. Notice with this capture on e5, white has pulled away at least one defender of the back rank. With this combination, white is exploiting black's back rank weakness. Both sides had back rank weaknesses in this game. Neither had a flight square throughout, but white is the one who pounces, is able to pounce first. Knight takes f7 is the final move of this game. Black resigns. If rook takes knight, there's rook d8, and all you could do is block. Eventually it's mate. And if you play king g8, the only other move, we take the queen and enjoy being up a knight and 2 pawns, which is too much. So a very nice finish to this one, elegant finish. And I hope you appreciate this final combination a bit more. You know, before we get to this final combination, you know, what are the factors that led to it? These opening and middle game decisions, this idea by white early on to apply pressure to the e5 pawn, bringing it to a point where black felt compelled, it was necessary for black to give up the e5 point. And once it was given up, notice how both white knights and the white queen made use of that d4 square. White made very good use of d4. The knight made use of it, the queen. Eventually they shifted over to the king side. And let's not forget the difference between a6 and c6. With c6 in, that meant d6 was soft, was weakened, and Kappa was laser focused on applying pressure to that weak point on d6. And then, and only then, do we get to appreciate in the endgame phase this elegant combination. Anyhow, that's all for this video. As usual, I hope you got something out of it, and hope you're having a great day. That's all for now. Take care.